Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Speaker for tonight's session is Sara Singmaster. She is the Vice President of Modern Delivery, Freddie Mac's Agile Transformation Program. Prior to this role, Sara also led the organization and culture pillar of Modern Delivery Initiative. She comes from a deep experience from the HR side as well. She has led various transformational changes. We all are looking forward for her talk about Stop Talking About Culture Change. So the floor is all yours, Sara.
Thank you. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, and let me know if you guys don't see it, but hopefully you see it now. Good. All right. Great. So thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I usually love speaking and connecting with audiences. So COVID's been hard for me because I haven't been able to kind of get out there and talk to people like I usually like to. But like Anju mentioned, I'm the VP of Modern Delivery at Freddie Mac. And for those who don't know, Freddie Mac is in the secondary mortgage market. So what that means is we basically buy mortgages from banks and we package them up, securitize them, and sell them. So it's kind of a unique business, but thought I'd give that context in case anybody was thinking, what the heck is Freddie Mac? So as mentioned, I came from HR and came over to help with the Agile transformation. I didn't know that I'd be able to help, but actually when I interviewed for the job, I realized that this is actually a lot to do with some of the culture things that I was really passionate about in HR. Had a lot of fun, and then ended up actually taking over the whole transformation. So it's been fascinating. And I know you guys are here because you think the same way I do, which is that culture and focusing on the people aspects of change are fundamentally important. Change won't happen otherwise. So I'm excited to share some things we learned, either from the transformation or things just I've picked up other places. And if there's stuff in the chat you guys want to share with each other, of course, always recommend that. Any questions in the Q&A, my fellow panelists, I know people can't speak, but if there's questions, feel free to interrupt me. I don't like listening to one person talk nonstop, so I presume the same of others. So feel free to interrupt me if there's an interesting question that I can answer. So let me see if I can advance. Okay, so change is hard. And I really resonated with this image. I feel like this dog is my spirit animal. We get a vision in our head, what we're gonna do, what we're gonna be. In my case, I'm always like, I'm gonna be healthy, I'm gonna eat healthy, I'm gonna exercise, I'm gonna meditate, all these healthy things. And then I don't put them into action, right? Funnel cake is just so delicious. And so the challenge is not only having the vision, knowing what the change is, but of course, taking the action. And so one of the things that when I did a leadership program, this model was shared and I really liked it. And I've shared this with a number of groups of people and I've gotten feedback that other folks have liked it too. So you may have seen this, you may have not. It's called the 4 stages of competence. And so basically the idea is with any change we want to make, there's 4 different levels. So you start at the unconsciously incompetent. So if we use my food example, right? This stage is I'm unhealthy, but I don't know what I'm doing wrong, right? I'm eating food. I'm not recognizing that what I'm eating and the fact that I'm not exercising is what's making me unhealthy. To get up to the second quartile, you would know, but you're still making that bad decision. So this is where I live, right? Like I know I shouldn't eat the ice cream. I know I shouldn't, not work out. I know I should go to the gym, but I'm still not doing it. So I'm consciously incompetent. And so it's basically that's the y-axis is the consciousness that you don't know and now you know, but you're not actually taking the action. So what I want to talk about mainly tonight is moving from quartile 2 to quartile 3, because that's where I think the real challenge is and where I think obviously you see the biggest difference. So to go from quartile 2 to quartile 3, that's what requires action. So you can know, but you're not doing it. To get to quartile 3, you have to do something. You have to make a change to get you to that quartile. So if we continue with my eating example, that's when I say, I'm going to have a salad for lunch today. And then maybe something healthy for dinner, and I'm going to go to the gym, right? You're making a decision, you're taking an action to be more competent. Now, the trick is to get to quartile 4, you have to do that over and over again so it becomes part of your being. So if you eat a salad every day for lunch, maybe after a month or 2 months, you don't even think about what you're having for lunch. You're just having your salad, right? It becomes unconscious that you're just in a more healthier routine. So the same can be applied, the same kind of method can be applied for so many changes. So, when you think about culture change at your company, if you want to be more collaborative or more inclusive, if you think about where you are in these quartiles, it can really help you figure out what you need to do to move along in the spectrum and then hopefully get to that Q4, because that's where culture lives. Culture is what you are unconsciously doing all the time, right? And hopefully, obviously, in a competent way. We want it to be good things. So how can you get there? How can you make those changes is obviously what I want to talk about tonight. Okay, so we're going to try a Menti. I haven't tried this myself before, so in the spirit of taking a risk here, I did set one up for the first time. So I want you to put in the Menti what you want your culture to be. So like 3 words that come to mind, and it can be your team culture, it can be your company culture. What do you think it should be? What do you aspire to see your team culture, your company culture be? So maybe type in like 3 words. If you go to the Menti on your phone, menti.com, and enter in that code, and let me go over to that. It's really going to test my multitasking skills here. Okay, I'm starting to get something. Now I got to share. Let me share this screen. I'm going to stop sharing this one and go share that one. Okay, so again, anything you want your culture to be: adaptive to change, supportive. Maybe we can get a couple more. Oh, a couple more. Great. Welcoming, collaborative, respectable. Yep, these are great. Congruent. Another one come. Any others? Transparent, psychologically safe. Yep, absolutely. Collaboration, collaborative. Wonderful. Cooperative. So that's the first step, right? So you're now empathy, inclusive, vibrant. Oh, I like that one. Vibrant, diverse, trustful. These are great. Freestyle. So now you guys have moved from the quartile 1 to quartile 2. You know what you want to be and what's not working, right? So let me go back to the other screen. I'm like more excited than I should be that worked. Uh-oh. What did I do? Shouldn't have said that. One sec, everybody. Okay. Can you guys see my PowerPoint?
Yep. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Click the wrong button. Okay, so for us, so you guys put up great examples. We did the same thing in modern delivery, which was the agile transformation at Freddie Mac. So we knew we had some cultural behaviors or kind of ingrained type of things that we wanted to shift with this transformation. So we recognized what it is today and what we wanted it to be. So kind of what you guys put in that word cloud, that's what we wanted it to be. So that's the first step. What are we trying to achieve? So now we're in quartile 2. We know what we're kind of we're consciously incompetent with these things. What are the actions that we can take to get to be more competent? So we didn't just start throwing out ideas. I mean, we did some, but we really wanted to make sure that we were thoughtful about what those actions should be. So now we know we wanted to be more collaborative. We wanted to have people take more risks, be willing to fail, and be more empowered and have kind of more of an empowerment mindset. So knowing that, we talk to stakeholders, right? Not just the people on the teams, but the people around the teams who interact with the teams, the leaders of those teams, kind of the bosses, because that's where a lot of, kind of cultural messaging can come from. And then we also talk to other companies. So I do not believe in being original. I think it's overrated. I believe in stealing other people's ideas as much as possible. And even if those ideas don't work exactly, I think by talking to other companies, which is of course what you guys believe, because that's why you're here, but you can either one, find an idea that might work for you, two, have it spark a totally different idea, or three, hear an idea that you can kind of alter a bit that is like the starting place for a really good idea that will apply to your situation. So we found great ideas, just kind of calling other folks and saying, hey, how have you guys done this? Looking online for people who have been kind of interviewed and then reaching out and saying, hey, can we talk to you for 30 minutes? People are generally, as you guys know, very willing to share their story, and kind of, especially in the Agile community, I find, people are really open to sharing things they think worked and also sharing things that didn't work, so that they tried that they would recommend staying away from, which is also helpful. Also, separating the symptoms from the root cause. And this is a big one. With the collaboration, as an example, there are a lot of symptoms for, why we were siloed. A symptom could be kind of turf wars. A symptom could be people not sharing information, across teams. And the question is, well, why? Like, what's the root cause of that? I didn't want to solve for just having the teams share information across teams. That's a symptom, but why weren't they sharing information? Was it job insecurity? Was it they didn't have a forum or a tool to do that? Was it that they didn't prioritize that? They were so busy with other work, they didn't want to find time to share their learnings. What was that root cause? So I think that's a really important thing to think about when you're solving for some of these issues. Is this a symptom or is this really the root? Because if you solve the symptom, obviously the root's going to grow back up, right? Just like a weed, it's going to continue to grow. So until you really dig up the root, you haven't solved it. And I'll be honest with you, some things we did solve symptomatically, and we still have roots we got to work on. And then we tested a bunch of theories. So asking people, would this work? We even tested some ideas. With some of these actions, you have to ask yourself, if we do this, what's the worst that can happen, right? And some of the actions I'll talk about, you'll realize some things like, recognition, you can try that. If it doesn't work, you haven't heard anything, right? You've only recognized people, but it's not as though it's going to take things back. So we definitely had a bias towards action, and we're happy to try things. And if they didn't work, we just didn't continue with them. Like if we didn't find that they kind of moved the dial, we just didn't continue. So here's kind of what we did. Here are some of the specific actions we took. So after talking to people, testing some ideas, hearing what other companies did, here are some of the specific actions we took to try to get to quartile 3. And then hopefully, eventually after we do enough things over enough time span to get to quartile 4, we looked at team structure. So for empowerment, as you guys know, the team structure is very important. And we didn't want to have the manager on the team. We wanted to have people have an equal voice on the team. So we structured the teams in such a way that we really encouraged everyone to have kind of an equal footing, no matter if they were entry level, brand new to the firm, or a super senior technical type person. We also had a campaign to redefine what it meant to be a people manager. So this, I think, if you're a large corporation who's been around for a long time, this might ring true for you, where when you get to a management level, certain people think, great, I'm management, I don't have to do certain things, right? Like managers, some managers think at the management level, you assign work and review work. That is the role of a manager. Well, as part of our transformation, we wanted to kind of flip that script and say, a manager is a coach and a doer. So we didn't want a manager who simply, kind of looked at the category of work and doled it out and then reviewed it. Because on a team, the individual should be doing that, right? On a Scrum team, the individual is putting up their hand and taking work. There's no need to assign the work to them. And if the manager is not on the team, they're not reviewing that work. So we changed the role of the manager, and we had a kind of a big campaign, a lot of tools, a lot of training, a lot of discussions about how managers can shift to be more of a coach, and also making sure that they had meaty work where they were more hands-on keyboard. So every manager, we wanted to be on a team who were also taking chunks of work to contribute as well. So that was a big shift. And I think, to be honest, I think we're still evolving in that way. It's definitely something we'll continue to work on and revisit. We have competency cards. So again, we wanted people to feel empowered. Their career is theirs. It's not a, if this, then that, if this, then that. For all the new roles we built as part of the transformation, we built all the levels out and the competencies that are expected at each level. So if you have kind of a developer, here are all the levels and here are the competencies we expect at each level. And then we also tied to that learning. So, there was kind of a role-based learning you could take to help you along that journey in the competency sense. And even if you were a developer and you wanted to move and be, a Scrum coach, we call Scrum Masters Scrum coaches. If you wanted to be a Scrum coach, you could go there and take that training and read those articles and view those videos that were associated with that learning path. So it was a way to show people that, your development is in your hands. We're going to provide you the tools, and hopefully your manager is going to act as a coach. But it really is empowering the individual to get the skills they need to be prepared for that next level. For collaboration, I love the table topics. It was so simple. This is one of those, we didn't overthink it. We just got people together. Well, first I should say, we had a quarterly survey where we asked people kind of what's on their mind, feedback on certain things. And so we asked people, what's the most frustrating thing, or what's a challenge you haven't been able to crack yet? And we took the most common topics and we wrote them down, we put them on a table, and we invited everyone. And we said, pick a topic, sit at the table, we'll ring a bell at 10 minutes. If you want, move to a different table. If you want to stay at that table, great. And we had somebody facilitate a conversation, and the sharing, the collaboration was wonderful. I mean, people were getting ideas. Frankly, some of them were venting, which was also, cathartic in a way to have them, have people be like, yes, that's frustrating for me too. And then, so what do we do about it? How can we fix it? It just created a great, simple way to get people together that I'm excited to do more of. The community, so we have modern delivery communities. Communities of practice is probably the term you guys have heard. And that is something from an action perspective. One thing we learned, so we set them up, we're we have these great communities, and then we kind of walked away. And if I go back to that quartile model we talked about at the beginning, we moved to quartile 3, and then we left. And guess what? It moved right back to quartile 2 because we didn't keep taking the action. We didn't keep, pouring fuel on the fire, so the fire went out. So now we've kind of relaunched it and really tried to make sure we're continuing to breathe oxygen into the fire, make sure those communities are, active and people are getting value out of them, and that the leaders of those communities are feeling recognized for all of their efforts. All the things you need to do to encourage that kind of continuation of that extra work. We're really kind of spending time to do that. And I think that's really helped. Recognition. This is I think coming from HR, this is probably, one of my favorites. So simple. We recognize teams that were acting in the ways we wanted them to act. And then we encourage individuals to recognize, across teams, on their team. We just really promoted a culture of recognition, which then, of course, spurred more collaboration. If you help someone and they recognize the help, you're more willing to help them and vice versa going forward. So it was a great, simple way to kind of spur more collaboration just by encouraging people to use the corporate recognition program that we already have. We didn't even have to create anything new. And then, learning from failure. Freddie Mac we're a risk company. That's our business. So it is hard when that's so baked into what we do to encourage people to take some risk and frankly to fail and for that to be okay. We as a program, we focus on the customer, we got feedback, we failed plenty. So we tried to model the behavior by trying things and admitting when they didn't work and trying something different. And then with the Scrum teams, we really helped them celebrate those imperfections. We gave those teams a platform. So as opposed to, modern delivery office only showcasing the best teams, we showcased the teams that were best at learning, right? Which is different. To be the best team is one thing by certain metrics, but to be the team that is growing the most, that is evolving the most, that's what we really tried to celebrate. And that, of course, involved a lot of talk about missteps or imperfections. So I wanted to point out here, it doesn't have to be a big change. I think sometimes, if you're trying to change a corporate culture, it's like trying to turn around an aircraft carrier, right? It's not a speedboat you can just spin around. And so it really can be daunting to think about how do I change a whole culture? Even on a team, how do you change a culture of a team? That's just such a daunting thing. But I want to show a video that just, I think, shows that it doesn't have to be a big change. It can be a small change that can really make a difference. Test my abilities again, see if I can, okay, this we're done with. So out of that.
Only man in history to double back and win the Olympic 100 and 200 double twice. He did it in Beijing.
And Tom, there are a few athletes in the past 4 years.
Look at the guy's face behind him.
He come back and fist pounded me. You could see that I was like, do you want it? I said yes please, and as he gave it to me, all the crowd roared as well, which was good.
So what does it feel like to a young volunteer to have thousands of people cheer for you while speaking to one of the greatest sprinters of all time?
Okay. I love that because I think it just shows small, simple actions can make a big difference. All he did was give fist bumps to people before he ran, or just in general. So it wasn't as though he was trying to, completely change everyone's life there. It was just a small gesture. But that's a major change, in terms of that person's life, like kind of what he impacted. So, just think about little things you can do, giving people an opportunity to be heard or to feel recognized.
Steals your heart. Oops. She was diagnosed at 5 weeks old.
Sorry.
A type of
Sorry about that. It kept sharing. Go back. Okay. Okay, so I wanted to bring some other ideas to my point earlier about why come up with new ideas. If other people have already thought of some great ideas, why not just think about those and either use them or adjust them so they work for you. But here are some kind of cultural changes, other companies or other teams have wanted to make, or frankly, other individuals have wanted to make, and how they're pushing them forward. So personal connection. I actually have a friend and old coworker who just started at Facebook. And he was saying that before his first day, everyone on his team reached out to get to know him personally. And, Facebook's mission is to create connection and to bring people together who have common interests and similar passions. And so what they were doing is kind of establishing the importance of that even on their own team. And I don't know if this was just for his team or something they do as a company, but he was so moved by the fact that they all wanted to get to know what drove him, what interested him, what was he like, so that he could feel comfortable to bring his whole self to work. And then when he got to work, to feel comfortable with everyone else so that they could start churning out high value, quality work immediately. So that's one example. Community involvement. So I've talked a lot about things people can do. I don't always think, well, I don't think that culture comes from the top, but I do think that senior management can have an impact if there's action behind it. So, Salesforce has a program they call the 1-1-1 model, and that they donate 1% of its products to various communities. And one of the things they do is each employee gets 7 days of paid time off to volunteer. So that is part of the culture saying we care about community involvement. They're not just putting it out there on the website saying, here's our values. They're saying, here's our values, and here's us actually backing it up with kind of, paid time off financially for employees to go actually get involved in the community. Customer focus, every company says they're customer focused, but what are they actually doing? Like, what are the actions that support that? My favorite example, it's an older example, but I still love it, is Zappos.com from when they started. They were known for when they would hire senior leaders, they would include everyone that person interacted with as part of the interview process. So if you're applying for like an executive job, you get picked up at the airport, they drive you over there, you check in, you park your car, and then you go for your interview. The interview process started when you got picked up. That driver was part of the interview process. How you treat that driver is considered. How you treat the security guard when you enter the building is considered. They're really showing that they care about how people treat everyone, not just the people they're interviewing with. And not only that, when people started, no matter what level, executive to entry level, the first 2 weeks for everyone were on the customer service hotline, answering calls from potentially angry customers. So again, those are actions they took to kind of back up this value they wanted to see of being customer focused. Data-driven decisioning. So from what I understand from people I know at Amazon, they ask questions to employees every day, 3 quick questions. So not one engagement survey per year, but just 3 kind of pulse check questions every morning to know what's going on, to know how you're feeling, to know how you feel about things going on at the company. And then they follow it up with actions. So if a certain group is responding in a certain way about a leader, they might get a coach for that leader or take some action to help that leader. So it really, Amazon is about data-driven decisioning. And they show that by collecting data, as much as possible and using that data to drive their decisions. Equity and inclusion. This is one where I get real frustrated. I don't know about you guys, but I hear a lot of talk about equity and inclusion. And I'm always like looking in the article, like, great, you say all this stuff. What are you doing? Like, how are you actually, creating more equity and inclusion? I heard from the head of HR at IBM in a presentation she gave that they are now not requiring a college education for half of their jobs in the US. So they are kind of flipping the script to say the standard way of go to college, get a job may or may not apply, right? Like that takes out a whole population of people who higher education may not have been an option for them. So they're focusing on the skills, no matter how you got the skills. If you're self-taught, whatever the case, they're looking for those skills, not how you got them. So I thought, again, that was an interesting corporate action they took to say that, no, we really do care about equity and inclusion, and we're going to kind of prove it by doing this. So those are some corporate examples, but I want to give some individual examples too, because I don't think a company has to change a culture. I believe really strongly that individuals can change a culture because it's contagious. When one person starts doing something, others emulate it, and it grows and grows, and then it becomes part of the natural fiber of a company. So one example, I was on the board of directors at a food bank, and we hired a new executive director. And so she started, and she noticed that the staff there were just killing themselves to help other people. And they weren't taking care of themselves, right? Like they were so focused on helping everyone. They were really kind of running themselves ragged. So she wanted to focus on employee wellness. And she wanted them to know that, there's a mantra, you can't pour from an empty cup. So you have to take care of yourself in order to help best take care of others. So she bought them pedometers, just on her own dime. She bought them little pedometers and did like a step challenge. So it was a small, set of employees, maybe 10. And she put a number up and said, instead of, being so focused all day, I want you to take a break, go for a walk, clear your head, get some, physical wellness and mental wellness. And let's see how many steps we can get in. And it was a team building exercise that really centered around people taking care of themselves. And it really shifted the culture. And it allowed employees to recognize that working hard all the time wasn't the best thing for them or their clients, the people they served. They needed to take care of themselves so they could best serve those in the community that needed their help. Another example, I have an old boss who relentless improvement is huge to him. And so he would always send articles. So, he wanted to make sure we were challenging the way we were thinking, and we weren't only focused on what was going on at Freddie Mac. And so he encouraged us to obviously go out, learn, but the action he took was, probably once every other week, he would send an article for us to read and say, hey, check this out, you should read this. And also, please send us articles, please feel free to send the team articles that you think are interesting. So that was his simple action to let us know that we needed to keep a pulse on what was going on outside our company, and that we should know what others were doing so that we could kind of improve what was going on at Freddie Mac. Simple thing, but really kind of set the culture that we need to continue challenging ourselves to get better, that what we're doing now is not going to be good enough forever. The things I do, I do consciously think about things. I have two things that I do all the time, which I feel like I'm in quartile 4 at this point because they become so ingrained in me after much practice and much pushing myself. But one is I always make sure people are included in meetings. So I keep an eye on who's speaking. I look at the attendee list. And if I have folks on a call who might be more introverted, I want to make sure to include them. Someone told me once that real inclusion is not getting invited to the dance. It's being asked to dance. And that really stuck with me because I want to make sure people are not just in the meeting, but they're contributing to the meeting. And they feel like they have an ability to speak and they have an opportunity to raise what they're thinking. So I will call on people, not in a confrontational way, but just say, hey, is there anything you want to add? Let them know that I want to hear from them, that their voice matters. And it's been really powerful. And to see the evolution for some people over time, there are folks who, have worked under me who started out very quiet, very introverted, and are now viewed as these thought leaders who are driving change. And of course, I'd like to think it's because I helped pull them out of that shell and help them find their voice. Who knows? I probably shouldn't take credit for it. But maybe I was a small little piece of just helping them make sure they knew that they were invited to dance, and we want them to dance, and they should feel empowered to do so. The other thing I really consciously try to do is I have a personal, motto, whatever. I always pass along compliments. And this one was hard because at first it would be awkward. I'd hear a compliment or I'd think it, and it would be for a peer or even somebody above me. And I'm like, that's awkward to send an email, when I was a director to a VP and be like, hey, you did this really well. But I really stuck with it. And I really tried to be thoughtful about what I included in that compliment. So it wasn't just, hey, thanks for coming to my meeting. But, I noticed in the meetings that when you speak, the attitude changes. There was one gentleman who I said, you're a real quiet leader. You don't always speak, but when you speak, you've taken everyone's thought into consideration, and you've kind of summarized all the issues and made us get to a better conclusion, right? I try to be thoughtful about what I thought the value was he was adding and communicate that in the compliment. And it meant so much to him. So even though it was awkward, and I didn't want to do it, I was really happy I did. And I've just continued to do that. If I hear someone say something positive, I tell them. If I think something particularly positive, I do try to pass it on as much as possible. So the question is, what are you doing? What are the actions you're taking? What's your personal mantra that you're trying to push forward? You wrote down or you sent through on the Menti, the things you want to see at your company or on your team. So what small actions can you take to drive that, right? What could you start with? Is it something like thank yous? Is it something like, calling on certain people or sending articles? I don't know, but there are little things you can do, which when aggregated up with when other people do it too, because it will be contagious, can really make a big difference. So now you're at quarter 2, right? what you want it to be. You're conscious about where you want to go. And so, like I just said, the question is, what are the actions you're going to take, and what do you want to do? So the head of HR at IBM, who I heard speak recently, said, culture, it's not what's on the company website. She said, it's what the people in the back of the cafeteria are whispering. So, your company could put on the website, we're innovative, we're collaborative. Those are just platitudes. It's really what people are saying, what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. Culture is the aggregation of everyone's actions, from the CEO on down to the most entry-level person. You aggregate how they act. That is what the culture is. What people say, it doesn't mean anything. So, it's time to think about how we act, how I act, how you act, and what that's doing to the culture. And if you're a leader of people, what can you do to inspire others to be part of a positive culture transformation? I do think return to work is a perfect opportunity, especially if you are at a company who's asking people to go physically back to the office. This is a big change. There will be missteps. People will not be happy. And so I've really tried to think about, how am I going to approach this? I want to make sure I'm part of the solution and not part of the problem, in terms of where I want the corporate culture to be, even if I don't agree with every little decision, right? I don't get to make every decision. I recognize the people who do think they're doing what's in the best interest of the company. And I want to support that to try to make the company as successful as possible. So how can we take actions to help make it, that positive place we want to be, even if, like I said, I think there will be missteps. I mean, it's inevitable, right? So this is a great time. And if you're staying remote, still a great time. Like, as everything is evolving, the world is kind of opening back up. This change breeds opportunity. So the last point, I talked a lot about actions, right? Culture isn't what you say, it's what you do. But it's what you do that makes people feel. So Maya Angelou said, people forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And so when you look at the actions you want to take to drive that culture, make sure it's driving to that feeling. That is the key. Actions that aren't driving a feeling. And that's why I feel really strongly about recognition. I know when I get a nice note about value I added, I feel really good about myself. I feel proud. I feel happy. I remember that person made me feel that way, right? So think of your actions and think about how you're making people feel. I like to think, when I include people in meetings and encourage them to participate, that they feel included. They feel like I want to know what they have to say. So it's about the feeling more than just the action. So test yourself too. When you look at your actions, are you going to get to people's heartstrings, right? Are you making them feel a certain way? And I have this video. I'm not going to show it. It's 3 minutes, and I've talked for so long, but it's called the Acts of Kindness. If you guys look at it on YouTube, and basically it's a gentleman who does a lot of nice things. You've probably seen it. And the point is, at the end, it's really about, he's not a rich man, but he's rich in that all the feelings he's gotten, right? All the kindnesses, all the laughs, that's what makes him rich, because it's how he feels. And that's what kind of the currency is, if you will. So that is the end of my talk. My throat is dry. I have talked a lot. I am happy to answer any questions, and always happy, if after the fact, if people want to connect, always happy to do that as well.
Thank you, Sarah. We have a ton of questions. So that's great. A lot of comments too going here for you. So thank you for that. Do we want to close first and then take questions, or how do we want to do this, team?
And actually, we have 15 minutes. We can hit the questions, and then if they're running out, then we'll see.
Okay.
Let's be agile about it.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So starting from the first question, Niranjan asks, how did you bridge the mindset gap between employee and contractors?
Oh, yeah, that is a hard one. Having worked in HR too, I do think employees and contractors are different. And I think if we pretend like they're not, that's starting from the wrong place. right? It's a different agreement, but at the same time, we really made sure to recognize that, but also recognize that contractors were hugely important members of the team. So just because you're a contractor doesn't make you any less a member of the team. It just means your employment arrangement is different. So we tried to message that in every way possible. But when it came to culture messaging, we absolutely included contractors in those behaviors we wanted to see. For management and things like that, it didn't apply. But for collaboration and things like that, absolutely. We included the contractors and made sure that they knew we wanted their ideas. We wanted them to collaborate with others and help people, across different teams where it made sense.
Thank you. And then the next question is somehow hidden in a collapse mode. So every time I have to click, I think it might have gotten deleted. Okay. What was the hardest change you encountered? Thank you, Greg, for that question. What was the hardest change you encountered?
I think, the hardest change were the ones that impacted people's jobs, right? Titles, when we changed titles, as you guys have been through before, right? When you change someone from a product manager to a scrum master, we call them scrum coaches. That's really hard. I think a lot of times people don't realize our jobs are part of who we are, right? Like we feel very strongly about our jobs. We try really hard. It's 40 hours of our week, usually more every week. So it's part of our identity. So we tried to make sure people understood if they weren't excited about the change, that was okay, right? Like there are other paths, but we did need to make these changes because this was a new structure. So we try to remove from the individual and say, this is the new structure. We want to prepare you to do this role. If this isn't the role for you, there's other roles and we want to help you get there. So we tried to make the employee a little bit more in the driver's seat for that change. But I think anytime there's like a job change, I think that's very hard. I know it's hard for me. And I think it's hard for anyone who really feels passionately about what they're doing, which luckily for us, we have a lot of really passionate people.
Thank you. Karen wants to know, why didn't the communities of practice self-fuel after realizing that they were losing speed and energy? What did you or they do to ensure that they re-energized and sustained? Great question.
Very good question. I don't know. I think we just didn't, I don't think we set them up for success. So I think we said, yes, communities of practice, they're great. We want to have these 5, go forth. But I don't think that's enough, right? Like, I think you might have a rare person who feels really strongly, who's amazing, who will take that and run with it. And we did have some of those, but then there was turnover or that person got a new role. And so, just over time, there wasn't kind of that continuity. And so they kind of lost steam. And so once we realized that, we kind of pulled back and we rebranded. So we wanted to make it clear that that was not the ideal situation. We didn't want to relaunch them in the same way. So we did a little bit of a marketing campaign to say, I think we called them something different before, and we kind of changed the name. And then we built a structure. And as much as I dislike structure, I do think the structure was helpful, so that the leaders of the groups knew what they were getting into, knew what the expectations were, knew when we were going to check up, knew what budget they had, just those kind of little things that initially we thought, oh, they'll be totally grassroots. I don't think that's feasible in a company our size. I do think you need a little bit of structure to set people up for success, to kind of lead it, in a way that's going to help everyone and be successful. So it was a little bit of structure went a long way. That's the way I'll say it.
Thank you. And Jorge, pardon me if I'm not saying this right, his name. How did you get support from upper management for cultural transformation?
Our leadership was very supportive. I've been at Freddie Mac for 13 years now, 13 and a half years maybe. And they've been talking about culture change since I started. And I think what we demonstrated was that we were actually changing it. So many leaders before tried and couldn't, and we could. And so once they saw that movement, they were like so excited. And again, we didn't try to boil the ocean. We started with smaller things. And then once they saw the success in certain areas, they were able to, you know, trust and give us kind of more leash, if you will, to try more. So I think it was the buy-in came from us proving out our kind of success in a few areas and then growing that success to other places.
And then we have Talal asking, has the remote work situation shifted the culture in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has. I don't know that we're going to see the full impact of that until we come back and see kind of how it does it shift back. You know, I think everyone's really focused on output right now. Before, there may have been some focus on who's in the office, who's at the meeting, who shows up late. You know, those things don't matter anymore. And I think also you have to produce really good content to get people to pay attention in meetings. So like in this one, I was really worried about this session, you guys, because like you guys can easily tune out, right? In every meeting I have, people recognize you can tune out, right? There's other things to do. If you're in a meeting, you have to listen to the person. At home, you have any number of things you can do and not pay attention. So I think it's really shifted the culture because people have to bring an energy and like a challenge to a meeting. And if you don't really show up to that meeting with kind of a good facilitation and engagement model for people, you can tell people just check out. So I like that. I like that it's challenged us to have more productive meetings and to kind of encourage that collaboration. I hope that stays even when we're back in the office.
Niranjan asks, what were your guardrails? I'm not sure if I get the context. Maybe you do?
I mean, I'm not sure exactly. We do have a very robust metrics dashboard, which I think serves as some type of guardrails, right? If we're, we took transparency as a kind of a, you know, a key fundamental we wanted to see. And so, you know, we built a Tableau dashboard that has data on all the teams and they can see each other's. So instead of a guardrail per se, we went for transparency. And so if you can see other people are doing better than you, it's going to encourage you to want to do better and maybe even ask them, what are you doing to do so well? So that, I don't know if that answers the question, but I think transparency was a great way to need less guardrails, if that makes any sense.
Well said. And did you use any cultural assessment tool was the next question.
We didn't. I mean, we, as a company, we use Waggle, which is a tool which allows you to ask questions. And then it, you know, you can put in some suggestions and people vote on them. And we did get the results for those. We do get a carve out of that for the people on our Scrum teams. But we didn't do anything specific. I did design a little bit of an assessment myself. It was not rocket science. We asked people some questions. You know, I think we had like 4 categories, and then I designed some questions which I thought would tell us for those 4 like empowerment being one of them. We had like 3 or 4 questions which spoke to empowerment, and we did track that over time. But they were just simple questions. Again, I Googled around, I asked other people, and I tried to find ways to kind of evaluate, you know, how people are feeling in terms of empowerment. And then we did that quarterly so we could see over time, were we getting any better? And that was one of my team's OKRs. Were we seeing positive movement, you know, along that empowerment statistic we were seeing from employees and contractors?
And then Greg asks, Sarah, definitely.
Oh, that's not an ask. He's just telling me I'm awesome. Greg, thanks. You're the best.
He is. So I guess you know him.
No, I don't, but now we're best friends because.
Sarah, definitely brag, because I'm guessing you were a leader, and one of the key responsibilities of a leader is to create an environment for people to flourish. So yes,
very nice.
Giving you a positive compliment.
Yeah, no, I mean, I joke all the time that like I don't actually know what I'm doing. I can just really identify amazing people, and I just like lift them up. So it's kind of you know, one of those running jokes. I've been told time and time again, you know, stop being so self-deprecating. And I'm like, I'm really not. Like, I really feel like my superpower is I can see other people's superpowers. And so I have an amazing team, and they really have done incredible work. And some of them have moved on to even, different companies, bigger jobs. And I'm so excited about all of that, right? Like I feel very proud of all the people who I feel like I've helped grow and are now doing like really amazing things. So that's what, kind of gets me up in the morning.
So you're going to get an awful lot of applications now.
Our transformation's ending, unfortunately. We're getting to a point of not growing anymore, but I wish I could hire everybody.
Everybody's like, I want to work for Sara. Okay. And this is Sarb. He says, was there any situations where coaching turned into consulting, and how was that handled?
Yeah, I think we call this when the coaches go native, right? Like, and I don't know if this is exactly what the question is talking about, but some of our coaches did, would go work with a team and all of a sudden almost become too much a part of that team. So that is a challenge and something we had to kind of keep an eye on. We did try to shift coaches for that reason. And so we tried not to have the same coach be with the same group or same team for too long. Because they do become part of the fabric of that team and turn into almost a consultant for that team versus kind of the agile coach driving them to do the practices we wanted to see. So, it's very human nature. People want to be liked by those they work with. And so, of course, a coach, that's a hard role. You're there to push them, challenge them, but also you want them to enjoy working with you. And so sometimes, it can be tricky. But yeah, so we would cycle coaches through, move people around, and just give, really frank feedback. Most of the coaches I know, almost all of them love feedback. So if we felt like a coach was kind of turning into more of a consultant for that team versus a consultant for the transformation, we would give that feedback and they'd be happy to adjust.
All right, so at this moment, we have covered all questions. Oh, there is a new one. Okay. Sunita asks, how long was the transformation?
Yeah, I mean, we say it's a 3-year transformation. There's no end date really, but definitely we had goals for 3 years out, and now we're setting goals for kind of the next time period. But I think the thought was that we could get the vast majority of teams converted from project teams to kind of product scrum teams within that 3-year period. And we've gotten the vast majority of folks. The question is, do we want to get other types of teams, converting as well? So, I'm always thinking, what's next? What can we do more? But for what we set out to do, we're looking real good, and we're looking like it's gonna, complete kind of on schedule.
I think everybody's very satisfied at this point because there's compliments pouring in the chat.
Oh man, I gotta look at the chat to look at all the compliments. Well, this has been fun. I really appreciate you all having me.
So thank you so much, Sara. I really love your superpower. Superpower to see other superpowers. It's very addictive, very, very positive. So folks, thank you for joining today's LAN meetup session. Before we close it, I would love to update you all for the speaker info for next month's LAN meetup. So guess what? We are introducing international speakers from next month. So we have our first guest speaker for next month is from Canada. His name is Sri Natation. He's an Agile Director for Deloitte, Canada. So the next session is on July 15th, Thursday. Again, same second Thursday of every month. So the topic for next month is reinventing your organization to become customer-driven and nimble. So it's more about how the agility has helped larger organizations to be more customer-driven and outcome-oriented, value-based. So tune into that next month, and looking forward to see you all next month. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sara.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks
much, Sara.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Good night.